As a financial advisor now for over 20 years, without a doubt, the most common question I get asked is, "Hey, Azul, how much money do I need in order to be able to retire comfortably?" Not only is it the most common question I get asked, but it's probably the most important question for all of us, because if you don't know what that number is, it's really hard to say when you have enough and when you can retire. And I want you to get as much joy, as much fun out of your retirement. I don't want you to waste time because you don't know what that number is. So in today's video, I'm going to take you inside of the tent and share with you how I think about this question, so that you have some resources to think about the question yourself. So let's jump in. There's two important resources I'm going to share with you today. The first one is a study by Fidelity, where they did a very robust study and looked at how much people need in order to retire using what they call replacement income. So how much money are you making before you retire, and how much money are you going to have to replace in order to have a comfortable retirement? And I like it because Fidelity gives you ranges. The most important section of this report is the most boring, but it's the footnotes. I'm going to go through all of that with you. So that's the first report. The second report we'll cover after Fidelity, and it's I think, even more important than the first report. Okay, so let's jump in. So this is the Fidelity report. You can look it up online. If you just Google, "How much do I need to retire?" in Fidelity, this report will come up. And one of the main charts in this study is where they look at the age and they say, this is how much money Fidelity thinks you need to have to be on track for retirement. So it's super useful. And right here in one chart, we have a lot of really important information. So let's see what Fidelity says. So with 30, Fidelity says you should have 1 times your current income to be on path to have a comfortable retirement. Now, I should say Fidelity is assuming that you're going to work till you're 67. For many of my viewers, we don't want to work till we're 67, so we're going to have to save more. But this will get you in the ballpark, and we can tweak things once we're there. Okay, so for 30-year-olds, it's 1 times your income. For 35-year-olds, Fidelity would say it's 2 times your salary. For 40-year-olds, Fidelity would say that it's 3 times your salary. 45-year-olds, 4 times your salary. So let's say by the time you're 45, you're making $100,000 a year. So Fidelity would say we need to have almost $500,000 by the time we're 45. That's really hard to do. I'm going to show you in a little bit what percent of the U.S. population actually has this amount of money. It's good to have a roadmap, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to follow the roadmap. But let's keep going, because I'll talk about if you're not at these benchmarks, what you can do. Okay, by 50 years old, Fidelity says you should have 6 times your salary. By 55, 7 times. And here's where it starts to kick in. By 60, you should have 8 times. So let's say by 60, you're making $125,000 a year. Fidelity would say that you should have $1 million. That's a big number. Not many Americans retire with $1 million, whether they're at 60, 67, or at any age. And then at 67, which is full retirement age, for those of us that were, full retirement age for Social Security. Your full retirement age is when you feel comfortable that you can retire. You don't have to wait to 67. It's just Social Security is going to decrease. If you choose to take Social Security early, Social Security is going to decrease your benefits by about 5 or 6% for every year that you take it. If you're born 1960 or later, for every year that you take it before you reach your full retirement age. So Fidelity says at 67, we should have 10 times. Again, for this family that's making $125,000, Fidelity would say those folks should have $1.25 million. Now, before we jump in and I share with you what percent of Americans have this kind of money, I do want to share with you, I mentioned earlier, the footnotes are really important. I just want to point out here, Fidelity is assuming that you're going to replace 45% of your income in retirement, and the rest of so you're not going to live on 45% of your income. Few people could do that comfortably, but Fidelity is going to say the rest of it's going to come from Social Security. So you're replacing 45% of your income at 67, and the rest comes from Social Security. Now, as I said earlier, if you retire early, you're going to get less Social Security. So let's say that full replacement income is 80% between your savings at 45%, providing replacement income, and then Social Security would be 35% for a total of 80. So if you retire early, you're going to have less Social Security, so you're going to need to have more from savings. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and then the other thing is Fidelity just shares why they came up with a 45% replacement income. We're going to dig a lot deeper in this next report, which is going to be helpful. But let's look, how much do Americans have saved in their retirements? You know, almost half of all Americans don't have a dime saved in their retirement account. This is according to a chart from the Wall Street Journal. 49.5% of Americans have $0 saved in their retirement account. And if you add up all these numbers between $0 and up to $99,999, what you get is 80% of Americans have less than $100,000 in their retirement accounts. Now, it would be fair to push back on that and say, Azul, that's not the only way people get to retire. They have their home equity, money that their house is worth above and beyond what their mortgage is that they owe on it, right? So we have that. We have the regular bank account down the street that's not a retirement account per se, right? So that's fair, and the U.S. government actually tracks this for us, and the Federal Reserve is in charge of doing this. And every 3 years they do what's called the Survey of Consumer Finance, and they look at how much are Americans worth, how much are they saving, what is their net worth. And as a reminder, net worth is the value of your assets. So in this case, you know, the example I used earlier was a house. Let's say your house is worth, if you were to sell it, you would net, let's say, $500,000. But most of us have a mortgage on our house, so we don't get to keep. Be nice if we got to keep the full $500,000. So $500,000 is what it's worth, but we have to pay back the bank, let's say, $300,000. So our net worth would be the difference between those two, or $200,000. And then let's say maybe you have $50,000 in an emergency fund down at the local bank, right? That's not a retirement account, so it didn't show up in that Wall Street Journal article, but it is part of your net worth. And in this case, it would be that $200,000 from your house that you would net what it's worth less what you owe, plus the $50,000 in your savings account. So your net worth would be $250,000. So let's jump in. Okay, so this survey of consumer finance that's led by the Federal Reserve, done every 3 years. This study was for calendar year 2022, and the results were just released in October of 2023. So this is very recent, fresh data. It's going to be a long time till we have data as current as this is. So how's the average American doing? Again, this shows the median household net worth. So it's not average. Median is half of people have more than this, half the people have less. So it's right in the middle. And you can see for people under 35, they have $39,000. For people 35 to 44, they have $135,600. 45 to 54, they have $364,500. 65 to 74, about $410,000. So even after 64, that net worth continues to climb, which is what I see with my clients as well. And then eventually you start spending that down, so you can see people 75 plus have a lower net worth, $335,000. Okay, so how does that compare? Let's say somebody's making, when they're in this range, 55 to 64, they have $365,000. Let's say, and this is household net worth, not an individual. So the median household income in the United States is about $75,000. So let's look at the Fidelity chart again. Fidelity would say by the time you're 50, you should have 6 times your annual salary. So if your household income is $75,000, then Fidelity would say you should have $450,000. And what is our net worth? Here, the 45 to 54 is $250,000. So you can see there's a gap, right? So I said that there's two studies. We're going to get to what do you do if there's a gap. But first, let me talk about the second study. The second study actually was done in, it's about a decade-old study, but the fundamentals are still there. It was done by a group called Dimensional Funds, which is very well respected in the financial service industries. They make exchange-traded funds. They offer exchange-traded funds. And this is a report called How Much Should I Save for Retirement? And it's two researchers and authors are Massey DeSantis and then also Marlena Lee. So thank you, Massey. Thank you, Marlena, because this is a super helpful report. And this is the chart that I think is the most important, which is replacement rates needed by income. Because the reality is, if you're in the lower quartile of income earners in the United States, you know, you're kind of living month to month. It's really hard to save any money. So when you retire, there's probably not a lot of expenses you're going to cut out. So in this case, what this study found was the replacement income needed was going to be 82%. And here you can see that almost 60% is coming from Social Security. So remember in the Fidelity report, they were saying 45% is coming from your savings. Well, for people in the lower income, they're not going to have that money. So what this study found is only 23% is coming from their income. And then for people that are between the lowest quartile and the median halfway, what this report showed was overall they needed a replacement income of 72%. And instead of 45% coming from your savings, they found 34%. And then continuing to go, if you're in between the median and the upper quartile, so if you're in that group, the total replacement income is 62%. And it's basically split 50-50, but I want you to notice something. Your replacement income from your savings is only 31%, which is it's a third lower than 45%. So it's dramatically less. And then for people that are in the upper quartile of U.S. society from an income standpoint, you can see that the overall replacement income is just under 60%, 58%. Social Security is going to do 21%. So in this case, the portfolio only has to support 37%, not 45%. So many people have commented when I've shared the Fidelity report in the past, it says, Azul, that seems like a big number. And this report would say, yes, I agree, it is a big number. However, as we saw from that survey of consumer finance by the Federal Reserve, most of us are not saving enough. So it's our path, our goal is, we're not as far from our goal as what we think, but most of us are not there yet. So what do you do if you're not there yet? I like to use a rule with my clients called the 50-30-20 rule. And basically, it involves getting your savings up to 20%. That's what the 20 is in the 50-30-20 rule. And essentially, many of us were taught, save 10% when you're younger, continue to save throughout your working years 10%, and you're gonna be fine. You know, unfortunately, that's not the world we live in today. Because when my grandparents were getting ready to retire, you know, at that time, many people that worked for companies had a pension. For most of us, pensions are gone. Fortunately, not for all of us. My grandparents had Social Security because they paid into Social Security their whole life. But for them, none of their Social Security was taxed. For many of my viewers, 85% of our Social Security is going to be taxed. So yeah, we still have that pillar, but it's a shorter pillar than what it was before. And then the third pillar is our savings. So because the pension is gone, because the Social Security pillar is cut, and might get cut more, right? Because we all know Social Security is running out of money. Janet Yellen, who chairs the trustees for the Social Security Trust Fund, says that Social Security will no longer have an excess by 2034, which as I record that is only a decade away. And at that point, the incoming revenues, the taxes that we're all paying into Social Security, will only cover 80% of the benefits. So at some point, something's got to happen. Now, I don't think we need to worry about our benefits being cut, but I do want to point out that we no longer have 3 pillars, we only have 2 pillars, and one of those pillars is in trouble, right? I think we can still count on it, but it's not as strong as certainly was for my grandparents. So because of that, we have to save more. The rule for me is 20%, try to get there. How do you get there if you're not there yet? Well, if the goal is 20%, right, start with the end in mind. If the goal is 20%, well, the 50 and the 30, so basically I'm breaking our lives into everything that we spend money on is either a need, so utility bill, grocery bill, gasoline for our car payment if we have a car payment. Those are our needs. And try to keep that to 50% of your after-tax take-home pay. And if you can keep your wants, things like going out to dinner, going on a nice vacation, buying stuff on Amazon, I shouldn't mention a company name, buying stuff that shows up in cardboard boxes a couple times a week. If we can keep that to 30% or less, then what's left over is 20%. So I wish I had a magic bullet that I could say, do this. I can tell you what you should not do. And what you should not do is start taking a lot of risk in your investments in the hopes of getting a higher return. Because more often than not, there are winners that do that, but there's also winners of the lottery, and it doesn't mean that that's a good return. If you enjoy doing the lottery, that's one thing, but if that's your retirement plan, you know, that's probably fraught with challenges, as would be any of these get-rich-quick schemes. So I want you to be diversified. I want you to work with a financial advisor. Nothing I've shared with you today is financial advice. I don't know your situation. But I want you to work with somebody that knows who you are, that has a fiduciary duty to you 100% of the time. So they're bringing their smarts to your benefit, not to sell you something that you don't need, right? So work with a professional to know your situation and then start building towards that goal. And a fundamental part of that is going to be saving as much money as you can while still enjoying the journey. And that's an important part, because getting to retirement is one of our goals as we're going through this one life that we get to live. The other goal is to enjoy our journey. And that's what this video up here is all about, which is 7 things that I want you to cut out doing in your 50s and 60s on your way to the starting line, that is retirement. So thanks for watching this one. I'll see you in this video here. Bye-bye.